Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you in another video. So I'm sitting here just thinking about the fits that LeBron James has chosen to put around him over the years versus what all of the pundits who tend to love him always say is best for him to play with. For example, if I listen to Brian Windhorst, every time he gets a chance he mentions that LeBron James is best when he has floor spreaders around surrounding him, and with him having the ball in his hands to create for those floor spreaders, just keep tall, lengthy shooters around LeBron James, and it should be easy for him to operate and win. But for whatever reason, that's never the way he prefers to build. Never. He wants to put awkward fits around him. He wants to play with certain players that just don't fit that mold a lot of the time. And what I'm attempting to do is to try to come to some conclusion as to why that may be the case. I personally think one or two things. One, even though LeBron James might literally be the best point guard in the game, I don't think he necessarily wants the ball in his hands as the primary facilitator 100% of the time. I don't think that really works. I don't think that with him being a big, and a lot of times the way the team is constructed, he's a big on the floor as opposed to being a player with the same size as everybody else. What ends up happening is you now have him playing as a guard, and then you have him switching to play more or less big on the defensive side. It just becomes a situation where it's a bit cluttered, I think, on one hand. Another aspect of it is he doesn't really play well with other facilitators because they tend not to be shooters naturally most of the time. If they are shooters, they're elite, so he can't get them on his team. So a lot of times you got guys like Chris Paul who would fit perfectly with him, but that's like a max contract that he can't fit next to himself. So to me, it seems like in order for you to build the way that everybody thinks is best for LeBron, what ends up happening is it's too much pressure on LeBron James to be the ball handler. And if for some reason he goes down, those pieces don't play well with one another. That's the conclusion I've come to. That those pieces that best fit him, if for some reason he's not there, they can't even play with one another. They're completely and utterly useless with one another. Because in theory, those types of players, and this is in theory because guys find ways, but those type of players can really only go to the corner and wait for the ball to come into their hands, and then go back on the other side, play defense. That's really all they're doing, cutting from one side to the next, setting off-ball screens and stuff like that, basically getting themselves or others in positions to catch and shoot. Well, if you don't have a facilitator on the floor like LeBron James that's putting pressure on the rim and otherwise, making it so that those guys don't have to create for one another, then it all makes sense. But once he goes down, no facilitator there, and now you're asking those guys to create for one another, you have very, very bad offense. That's what you have. So that's the thing that comes to mind when I consider why LeBron James just won't let the Lakers build a very conventional roster around him. Why are we going after Russell Westbrook when he doesn't fit at all? Well, the answer to that, in my mind, was he's a facilitator who can manage things if LeBron James isn't on the floor. So if for example, if those players who fit around Bron, happen to not have Bron on the floor, a guy like Russell Westbrook can otherwise do the things that Bron can do, and that's the theory. The problem is, if you have Russell Westbrook at $47 million, what you don't have is those guys. They're not there. So that's where the Lakers went wrong. Yes, Russell Westbrook, in theory, before this season is supposed to be able to hold everything down if Bron ain't there, because he's a triple-double threat who can get big scoring. But what we found out is that is not the case anymore, and certainly not without a center on the floor. So that's what we learned. And I think a lot of what went wrong with the Lakers last year had to do with the style of play, as I've said a million times. The coaching was not good, period. You guys know how I feel about Frank Vogel. The coaching was not good. And so that also, too, had to do with the struggles I think the Lakers had going on down there. But at the end of the day, LeBron James is going to need multiple facilitators. If you want to build for the conventional way that Brian Windhorst says, you had better make sure you have another massive facilitator in place who can do the things LeBron does, a Scotty Barnes or somebody like that, Ben Simmons, so that those players that otherwise fit aren't absolutely useless when he's not there specifically. So that's what I have to say, man. You want a team that can hold up, because at the end of the day now LeBron James is at a risk for being an injury-prone player, and we know that. So at this age, even though he's playing at a super high level, the likelihood of him going down and staying down for longer than usual because of his age is something you got to prepare for. So I understand why the Lakers want to build a certain way rather than just do it the conventional way. And if you expect him to play 82 games plus playoffs, 48 minutes a game, then you build conventionally because you never have to take him off the floor. But in this NBA, he has to come off the floor, plus foul trouble anyway. So yeah, that's why I think LeBron James doesn't tend to build the most conventional way to fit himself. Because if he ain't there, that team's trash. My name is BDL44. I thank you all for watching.